that's why it's really important to have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this degen?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is a permanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss.
But really, at the end of the day, it's just the matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so we can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and D-gentlemen of all ages. Welcome back to another show over on the D-Gen Roundtable. This time, it's Friday, so it's book club time. And today, we're talking about the big one. That's right, we are talking about 1984. I got my hard copy here. As in fashion, the guy in the story is talking about how if you have physical copies of things, it's the only thing that can't be changed. And I got mine as well. Outside of that, though, hello! I'm your host for the evening, Zenith. And yes, I may or may not have also pulled another book from a bit of older history. Yes, the book is now 76 years old, believe it or not, written back in 1949. But one of the things we will be talking about tonight is, what did he get right? What did he get wrong? And dear God, how did he get so much so right? Anyways, I'm joined by an excellent cast of characters here tonight. First off, my co-host, Mr. Will Stevenson. How you doing, buddy?
Aloha, amigos. I am doing all right. This is currently the longest I have ever gone without eating before is right now at this moment. I'm in the middle of day 3, or no, I'm past day 3 actually. I don't know. I have 38 hours of fast left, or almost 39 hours of fast left.
Stop counting.
And so it's just like, it's interesting, man. Like you're absolutely right on. It is all in your head, but it's like, I'm also all in my head. Like the entirety of who is me is inside my head. So like these chemicals and lack of balances and things that are happening, it's like, this is something I am not used to. So, yeah, I'm doing great though. Like life is good. I'm paying attention to a whole lot more as a result of the fasting, but I'm like not talking as much with people in real life. I've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of my friends. Are like, man, you're just not as talkative as you normally are. And it's like, that's interesting. I'm like missing the fuel or something. So it's amusing. I hope I can do a great job on this podcast. I look forward to it. This book was a bit of a bummer as it is for those who have ever read 1984 before. It's like, it's not a happy story. It is a spoiler alert. It's about communism, so it doesn't necessarily end well. And it gives the reader an idea of like, hey, this could happen if you allow your society to get to this point. So probably don't do that. But anyways, I'm doing great. It's awesome. Let's introduce the other guest right over here. We've got Dr. Alan Chen joining us tonight. How are you doing, broski? What's new and exciting with you?
I am doing great. I am somewhere else. If you want to know where I am, you can always follow me on Instagram. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Yeah, I actually read the book first when I was in high school, and at that time, I did not take literature very seriously because I had a Karen for an English teacher, so I didn't want to read anything. So I just back in my day, we had Cliff Notes. We didn't have AI or anything like that.
The good old days.
The good old days. And that did not bring together the seriousness of this book at that time, and I kind of just shrugged it off. I kind of understood the general gist of it, but all the meanings, all the deeper relations to now have now come full circle. And I actually listened to, Audible has a dramatic rendition of it by Andrew Garfield, who I did not know had a British accent. So that was cool. Anyway, no, it was the voice rendition of that book, because they kind of, what that does is that they skip like he said, she said text, and they actually like act it all out. Yeah. Was eerie to say the least. It was eerie. Like I was like chills down my spine, and there was no video to go with it. And I was just like, damn, like that. They did a good job with that. So I recommend you can put that in the background. It's only 3 hours. You can put it in the background, like if you're having a long car trip or something like that. It is freaking eerie. So I certainly got a lot more meaning out of it now, especially after the last, I don't know, 5 years. You can make a ton of correlations as to what the book was about, but enough with the spoiler alerts. Spoiler alert, there's going to be a lot of spoiler alerts. Let's get right into the book.
Sounds good. But before we get right into the book, we do have to say hello to all the excellent people that are joining us on a beautiful Friday night. I saw one of these guys earlier over on RH Max's channel. But yes, Will, hit us with the thing. Do the thing.
Time, ladies and gentlemen, for chat motherfucking shout outs. And before we get into the chat shout outs, I just want to say, how the hell did you find a 3 hour version of this? The version I found on Audible was 7 hours, and that's like with it being at 1.7 times speed. So I don't know how they managed to do that, but
I don't know how you guys found either of those, because my copy was 12 hours long, and the first one that I got was accidentally in Spanish.
Yes, dude, I did the same fucking thing. I was so pissed off.
Bitch.
Oh my God, I did the same fucking. I typed in 1984, and the first thing that came up was it was not Spanish. This one. It was the fucking Spanish one. And yeah, bro, I think mine is also 12 hours. If I put it on 1.0 speed, then yeah, 12 hours, 12 hours and 18 fucking minutes. So
there you go.
Yeah. Newspeak. They're doing it to us.
Yeah. If the whole book's in Newspeak, then you don't gotta worry about all this time and stuff. And then there's like a part in the book where he's like reading a book, so it's just like a book within a book, and it's like, what's going on here? It was good. It was a good use of my time to think about philosophical stuff. But it's time for chat motherfucking shout out. So without any further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and start pulling these up. Zenith, here you go.
My good friend, first DJ of the night, and also the guy I was mentioning. I saw him over on RH Max's stream. I had a great time over there with Gerardo, Crypto Kong, and of course RH Max. We did a bullish stream on Pulse Chain. It was a good time. But Centurion 54X, aka 54 Cent, he says, "What's up, DJs? Good to see you, sir. Welcome back." Up next, Amber Simone. Hello to you as well. Hope you're having a fantastic evening. And we have a good little quote here. Small excerpt from the book. Centurion 54X is saying, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength." Kind of sounds like the Sith code. Yes, for all you book nerds of the Star Wars variety, you may recognize some of that stuff. It does sound eerily similar. And outside of that, I believe other than that, it's only you and me talking back and forth to each other on our same account here.
Yep.
In fact, StreamYards lets multiple people log into the producer account. So here we are. Excellent. Alrighty, let's get to the book. So, I guess spoiler warning: we will be talking about everything, including the ending. Surprise, he gets shot in the back of the head. Whatever.
Wait, does he?
Oh yeah.
I don't remember that part.
Who gets shot in the back of the head?
I don't remember him getting shot in the back of the head. He lives his life happily, in love with Big Brother.
Dude,
he's drinking Victory Gin and hanging out in a coffee shop.
That's that version I got.
Yeah, he doesn't get shot.
Dude, the Newspeak, man, it's already happening to us.
Oh Jesus, they're changing the book. They changed the book, Zenith.
We're fucked.
Stand by.
It's already happening. Hang on. Does Winston
even AI says that? And AI is always right.
Of 1984.
Well, he was walking down the white tiled corridor with the feeling of walking in sunlight and an armed guard at his back. The long hoped for bullet was entering his brain. He gazed up at the enormous face, 40 years it had taken him to learn what kind of smile was hidden beneath the dark mustache. Oh, cruel, needless misunderstanding, oh, stubborn, self-willed exile from the loving breast. 2 gin-scented tears trickled down the sides of his nose, but it was all right. Everything was right. The struggle was finished. He had won the victory over himself. He loved Big Brother.
He doesn't get shot in the back of the head.
But what are you talking about?
Well,
it literally says the long hoped for bullet was entering his brain.
I think that's a figurative thing.
That means he's thinking about it.
Yeah. I think it's figurative.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm quite
Well, I guess I'm
positive.
just too little.
I just Googled it and like he does not literally die, but
I think
the
I think it's his
concluding
spirit died.
paragraphs.
I think his spirit was shot in the head, like figuratively.
Is
I
this
mean,
one
he
of
might
those
as well be
dumb
dead.
books
You know,
that has
he
an
lost.
awesome
might as well be dead.
interpretation ending?
I would say whether he literally died or not, he lost his humanness that he had in the beginning of
Human
the book.
spirit, yeah.
And so in that sense, he died. Either way, I was like, what? No, he didn't die. That's
All right, I thought he died.
oh, okay.
I mean, he died
That would be a
essentially.
much
Like,
better ending, I think, if he'd have died, because then his fucking. But the whole point of the book is you don't die, you get reused, or you get.
I guess my vision of this is
Repurposed.
probably colored by my other understanding of literary works, which you mentioned earlier in the intro there, Will, that this is not a happy book. This is a sad book. To put it in old Shakespearean terms, this is not a comedy. This is a tragedy. And in Shakespeare's books, they always end in one of two ways. You either get married, that's the comedy, or you die. That's the tragedy. So
because those
maybe
are
that's
the marriage be the tragedy.
That's just me reading too much into it. Anyways,
Yeah.
here's the synopsis of the book. So the book is spread out into 3 parts. Part 1, we get introduced to Winston Smith. This is a bit of a play on the Winston Churchill of the time, but they didn't want to give him Churchill as a last name, so they gave him Smith because he's a working man. What is his job, you may ask? He works for the Ministry of Truth. What the Ministry of Truth does is it corrects the history records to make sure that all of the random predictions that Big Brother has given to the people, aka weather reports, military and conflict reports, and all that stuff, they always have to be correct in the end, anyways, because it turns out they often are not. And a whole portion of the book is dedicated to the idea of getting people to forget the past and believe whatever the party wants them to believe. For a quick synopsis, the party is a reference to kind of like the control, or their deep state, so to speak, that is in control of the entire society and everything going on. Big Brother is a poster, or more of an idea, but is picturized by a man with a black mustache that is always plastered everywhere and is always looking, and wherever you go, it always feels like the picture is looking at you. Additionally, there are television screens, or what's the word they use for them?
Telescreen.
Telescreens.
Yeah.
They are everywhere, but it's actually more like a webcam or a live Zoom call all the time, which is that they are showing you information, but at the same time, everything you do is being watched and recorded by the party. Additionally, there's a mysterious group known as the Thought Police who monitor thought crimes. Anything that you say that can go against the party is a thought crime, effectively. So we start off the book. We have Winston. He's technically married to a lady who he doesn't really love, and they live apart technically, but they're not allowed to ever get not married, and they can't have kids. But he doesn't exactly feel very warm to them, so it could be some classic British isms coming out there. But I'm just saying. As he also participates in a social club where they monitor your attendance. You show up, you play some ping pong. He likes to play chess in the corner like a weirdo. And you also get good lectures about the party and Big Brother and all the good things that are going on. Additionally, propaganda is very, very prevalent throughout the entire society. All those telescreens we talked about, they constantly are giving you news about the various wars and conflicts going on between the 3 major powers. You have Oceania, which is where Winston resides. It's pretty much like he's in London, although they kind of get rid of the cities and names. There is no capital because they don't want you to know where Big Brother is or where the inner party is. So that way they can never be defeated. Outside of that, we have Eastern Asia and we have Eurasia. Those are the 3 major powers in the world, and they are in variously shifting conflicts and alliances that change. And then later on, we get to the famous line, which is, "Oh, we were always at war with East Asia. We were never an ally with them. It just changed on a whim, and they happened to change it retrospectively." But there's a lot of other stuff that goes on in the society. In fact, in chapter 2, we actually get introduced to his neighbors, in which there are some children running around rather amok, and they're shouting to their mother, "Mom, we want to go see the hangings. We want to go see the traitors be killed." Because yes, this is a very totalitarian world, and that is one of the large themes of the book as well. So we get through that, but
family,
then
right?
Exactly.
Control the children. That's what they're doing.
Exactly. One of the things that Winston does that is borderline thought crime is that he has a diary. He writes things down and he constantly references it and remembers back to things. And he is one of the people that can actually visibly see when the things are changed and what they used to be and what they're now saying that they are. So thought crimes are afoot. After that, we get introduced to Julia, who is a lady who appeared to be stalking him at first. He was very worried that she was a part of the Thought Police and was going to turn him in to the thought police, or rather the black boots or the black shirts, whatever you want to call them. They're dressed in all black, they wear boots, and they stomp out the thought crimes. But turns out that she actually doesn't work for them. Instead, she slips them a note that says, "I love you." And from there, they begin a forbidden romance. Effectively, it's hard to have privacy in this society because there's the telescreens everywhere. But eventually, they do rent a small upstairs apartment from a guy that runs like a knick-knack curio shop, who appears to be like an old dude that Winston takes a liking to because he appears to be a guy that just kind of enjoys small things in life, or the own life, as the new speak in the book calls it. Those small moments of bliss that are technically not thought crimes, but they get damn near it. So we get going to that, and then we hear the rumors of the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood is a resistance against the party. It's supposedly made up of people who are trying to be free and liberated and eventually overthrow the party, but they we don't really get introduced to them too much. But there is one character. His name is O'Brien. He is a member of the Inner Party, which is kind of like the elite in there, and he actually is like one of the higher ups that Winston works for. Eventually, he gives a little slip of something, a small thought crime that he shares with Winston, and then Winston says, "Oh man, this guy must be part of the Brotherhood." So he takes his lover Julia to go meet with the guy in his flat. He tells them about the Brotherhood. He tells them about a manifest that they distribute to everyone around the world that wants to learn about the Brotherhood. Eventually, Winston gets one of these, and this is where they explore a lot of the themes of the book, which is the idea of the three great powers always in war with each other, the idea of doublespeak, or doublespeak. Doublespeak. It's the idea that you can hold two contradictory ideas in your head, but believe them to be true both at the same time, because it's what the party requires. Eventually,
Newspeak is the
doublethink and Newspeak. Thank you.
Yeah.
Newspeak, by the way, is part of what Winston does for his job. Newspeak is a language being created by the party where they are trying to consolidate language so that they can control it and control what the people think or what they're even able to think. At this point, after we get the book, we turn back to Julia and Winston doing their little shag fest above the curio shop, rocking the snow globes downstairs. And then it turns out that the owner of the curio shop is actually part of the thought police. Kicks down the door, grabs both of them, and that's where we get to part 3 of the book, where they straight up get sent to what is effectively the gulag. They get sent to the thought crime prison, and here they're actually both tortured and eventually kind of brainwashed into believing the party and believing that all their old memories are lies and they can't be trusted for anything. You have to believe what the party believes. Anything else is not real. There are 2 famous scenes in the torture area here. Number 1 is where Winston is literally strapped down to a desk, or a table, if you will, and effectively is getting the old car battery treatment, if you will. And every time, O'Brien, who he thought was his friend, actually turned out to work for the thought police as well, and in fact is his torturer. At this point, he does the famous scene where he shows 4 fingers, and he asks Winston, "How many fingers am I showing?" He wants him to say 5. It might also be 3, whatever is needed for the moment. But Winston, for a long time, is adamant that he sees 4 fingers, and he just says there are 4, and each time they keep giving him a little more juice. Till eventually he passes out. The men in the lab coats, they give him drugs to make him go to sleep. He can't remember what are his own dreams, what are the dreams that are induced in him, all that stuff. Finally, he gets to the point where he starts believing in the party and believing that his own memory is a lie, and all these things he once remembered were actually just made up and not true. But that's where we get to the final point, where he says, O'Brien comes in one day and asks him, "So, how do you feel about Big Brother?" He says, "I get it, but I still hate him." He says, now it's time for the final part of the conversion. He takes him to a room, straps him down to a chair, where he finally gets to the answer of what is in room 101, the fabled room 101 that all the different prisoners hear about all the time. And they keep telling him, you already know what's in there. What's in there? Well, turns out they've been watching you your whole time, so they know what your deepest, darkest fears are. In Winston's case, he hates rats. So they build a cage that is effectively a helmet. And there are 2 giant hungry rats in there, and they're getting ready to strap it onto his face to tell him that you're not there yet. You just don't get it. So now we just got to feed your face to these rats. And then he does the final thing that really converts him, which is that he turns on Julia, the one person that he loved. Instead, he says, "Please do this to Julia. Do it to Julia instead," believing that Julia had already turned on him and said very similar things about him when she was in room 101. At this point, they finally let him go and reintegrate him back into society, where he lives out his days until we get to the metaphorical final passage there, where he's waiting for the news reports to hear about the war with East Asia or Eurasia or whatever, whoever they're at war with now is going. And eventually they get good news that they've won, they've done it. And then at that moment, we do get the ending where he falls down, a truly broken man or dying man, depending on your interpretation. And he looks up at the giant poster of Big Brother and he says, I get it. I love Big Brother. And there you go. That's the book. Told you.
Ta-da!
Spoilers. Did I miss any important parts in there?
After. Sorry, what was that?
Did I miss
The
any
daughter.
important parts in there?
The daughter of the family, like that to me was really important because she turned in her dad.
Mm.
That was that was one that gut wrenched me because we're seeing it now where children are being indoctrinated in schools like this. That's one. I love War and Peace, ignorance. That's what Centurion said. War is peace, ignorance, strength, freedom, slavery. Like up is down, left is right. 2 + 2 is 5. Like nothing's nothing has any definitions anymore. Yeah. So they vaporize people too. They erase you from history.
Yep.
That's true. That is an interesting thing. When someone disappears, they literally say vaporize. And when you get vaporized, like you are gone. They literally like turn you into gas that gets released into the atmosphere and they delete every existence of you from every record possible, including the memories of people in society. It's pretty brutal stuff.
Yep. So like no more mentions of you in the school newspaper, all of your birth certificates gone, all of your Facebook profiles, all of your everything that is you is erased from existence. So that's getting vaporized.
Yep. For an example, one of the people that Winston actually works with, I think his name was Syme. He is also a guy that comes up with new speak, but he's actually a little too good at it and a little too talkative. So he gets vaporized. The only way that Winston knows he gets vaporized is A, he doesn't see him anymore. And 2, he goes and looks at the roster for the chess club, which Syme is also a part of. He counts the number of names and notices that one is missing. And presumably it's Syme.
Yep.
You know, Will, I will say I did a little extra research on the book. What's interesting is there's actually an appendix in the back of the book that is the Newspeak appendix. But you might notice that the definitions for and the explanations of everything are in plain English. So what some people have extrapolated is that the book doesn't get to it, but it technically is a happy ending because at some point in the future, the party is overthrown. This is all recorded in history books, and they explain it in plain English because true language has prevailed and the party has failed. That is an interpretation I've heard. I think I might be reading a little into the extra stuff there, but
that's a nice fanfic. I like that. That's a lot better than the alternative anyways.
Yeah.
This is true. Alrighty, gentlemen. Let's start the discussion here. I want to ask, what are some things that George Orwell got right that have largely been applicable to modern day society?
Everything.
All right. Can we be a little more specific?
Sure. Let's start with the Ministry of Truth. They tried this. They tried this in 2022. I wrote this down, where they were doing the Disinformation Governance Board, like the fucking fact check shit at the bottom of like every like certain posts when they go against the party line, aka my field when they're saying stuff about COVID. That didn't toe the party line. They put you a little fact check thing where they even like graded it out. Like you have to. This may be dangerous information. Are you sure? And then you have to click there to actually see it. Whereas most people would just scroll to the next thing. That's a form of like trying to hide the truth. So yeah, that was a big correlate to that. The last 5 years.
It is true. If I remember correctly, back when the government board that was proposed for this one, they actually proposed the idea of the Ministry of Truth.
Yes,
like the literal name.
Yep. It's just like, wow, that's on the nose. And, like there might have been some government agent guy who's like, man, I'm the one in charge of naming this. I should name it the most obvious thing ever because I think this is a terrible idea. So maybe there's some government official up there that is just like, you know what, I can't overrun the machine, but I can like poke fun at it. And perhaps these other politicians haven't read 1984 because they're politicians. They're not, well-read, astute individuals. But that's the fun and fancy little fairy tale that I like to think about.
True. I I mentioned the book is 76 years old, but oddly enough, it became hyper relevant during the last 5, effectively, during the time of COVID, as you mentioned. Who knows? Maybe YouTube will even put a warning on this show. It's still possible.
Hey.
But yeah, that was true. It was a weird time where we did start to see a lot of things kind of get overwritten, where you saw the history changing in real time. One of the things that I remember in particular was back during the introduction of the vaccine for it. There was the idea that this would totally stop all transmission. It would do all that stuff. It's highly effective, like almost 100% effective. And then that number slowly went down. And then they were like, oh, wow, it doesn't even prevent transmission. Oh, wow, it never was supposed to. And they tried claiming it never was supposed to, even though you can pull up the tapes from like a year prior when people are telling you that, yeah, it was going to do exactly that. So,
and they changed the definition of a vaccine.
Yep.
Oh, they did?
Yep, they did.
Fuck. And they also tried to change.
It wasn't the way I learned it. It wasn't the way I learned it.
Yeah, you don't have to change the laws if you can change the words, huh?
Mm-hmm.
True. And they also changed the definition of gain of function research and tried arguing it. The words don't mean what the words mean.
Yeah.
Newspeak.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of one of Richard Hart's points that he made during his little video where he talks about like, man, when they came up with a $10,000, amount that you're legally, like if you're crossing the border and you have 10,000 cash, like back when that law first came out, it's worth about $84,000 or $85,000 in today's money with inflation factored in. So it's like, if you're crossing the border with 10 grand, like 20 years from now, 10 grand buys you a cheeseburger or something. Like if you just change the words, if you just change the meaning of things, you don't have to change the laws, because the judges are like, oh yeah, well the laws are written as very clearly, blah, 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 blah. And I remember that was a problem over the last 4 or 5 years or something. One of the other things that I think is very similar in the book is the vaporization in the cancel culture of today. Now it's more driven by cultural stuff than political forces, I would say. So it's more about, a whole bunch of angry pink-haired people or whatever getting together and being like, let's go cancel this guy, or let's write a bunch of angry letters to some sort of company or whatever because one of their employees said a bad word or something. Like, let's get Papa John fired from his own company because he decided to describe a word to somebody who's asking what words are we literally not allowed to say when we're working, So there's a whole bunch of the cancel culture stuff that's similar to the vaporization idea, or maybe even just how Winston removes facts from history or education or whatever and just kind of like throws it in what's called the memory hole, which is like, hey, I've got this old copy of what used to be the correct information. Now I put it in this trash can chute, which burns it all up into nothingness. So it's like they decided that Christopher Columbus did not, come to America in 1792 or 1492 or whatever the fuck year it was. I've already memory hold the information, I suppose, but they take the old stuff, they throw it in the garbage, it gets vaporized, and the new stuff gets printed out. That doesn't happen quite so much nowadays with the internet, because we have more people that are being citizen journalists that are making more signal, making more good content. But I think that one of the things that the book does is or one of the things that's different about today's society versus the book society is now we are just able to churn out so much signal and so much noise at such a high rate that getting quality information is way harder than going and finding a cat meme or going and finding pornography or going and finding some like Instagram thirst trap or something like that. Going out there and finding substantive information is way harder than going to just get some clickbait. So in the book, they talk about the girl, Julia, I believe that she worked for a brief period of time in the porn creation sector of the Ministry of Truth, where they basically just make a whole bunch of smut so that way they can get a whole bunch of people like sexually frustrated. They go into the whole sexual frustration and people being jacked up on testosterone all the time and sexually frustrated, so that they're always ready to like get angry at whoever the enemy is and go channel that rage in one direction and not channel it at the party. So there's a whole bunch of similarities, man. We could go on and on and on about all the similarities, but like that's one of the ones that stuck out to me.
It's true. To your point about vaporization, though, or the idea that by vaporizing is similar to cancel culture, I actually thought about it in a slightly different direction, but it's still along the same ideas. Inside the book, I think there are two other avenues that would more directly correlate to cancel culture as we know it by modern standards. Number one is the control of language, which is that I think there's a good degree of cancel culture, which is just trying to dig through people's history and find something from like 4 to 8 years ago, which at the time was culturally fine and acceptable. People might have even liked it. I'm looking at a lot of the comedians and stuff here because that's what they really went after. People who said naughty words, and now you're trying to control the words. The Ministry of Truth tries to create the newspeak, aka what is politically acceptable. And if you don't use the newspeak, then that is the crime. The other half of it is that there's a large degree of mob mentality in the book that is controlled by the party to whip the people into a frenzy to support the actions of the party. And that's the other half of the modern cancel culture element there, which is that it's largely controlled by a mob of people online to try to use a small, very large minority of people to get an action by people who are not really interested or care, but think that it might affect them in some way, whether it's a company monetarily or a person in their personal life, that kind of thing. So that's where I kind of saw the parallel for cancel culture.
Yeah, you need the culture to work for the party to be successful in this. That's 100%. And I mean, I saw this with people trying to get canceled for liking a post. Like that was ridiculous.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So actually, I was on Alan Roberts' show yesterday, and he was describing the stuff that he posted. He was getting reports that folks that liked his post were like being reported to their jobs and trying to get them to lose their jobs. So you absolutely need this very, very cringe group of people to work for the party and to do these kinds of things to suppress it. Because if you think about it, the number of people in government and even police, like if the entire population of the United States banded together and were united against the party or whatever you want to call it, we would
Very classic British meme there, Will.
Yep. I think the guy was Australian, but yeah.
Oh, that's what he was. Yeah.
We would easily be able to overthrow the party, but we just don't realize it. We're so divided at this point. That was another piece to the puzzle is the fact that we're just so divided right now and still that we can't come to any kind of consensus of anything. And that the fragmentation doesn't help things in that way. The other point that I want to make was we mentioned sex and like kind of the eradication of the fun of sex and what's really used for, and also the destruction of the family. They're saying that Winston and his estranged wife didn't really enjoy that relationship at all, and they didn't have any kids. That's happening now with Me Too, with all that shit. They had this campaign. I think it was like somewhere in Scandinavia where it's like they had this like jingle that it's like, stop, don't touch me there. This is my no-no. They were trying to like prevent rape. Like, that was so stupid. I was like, they're doing all these things to like destroy the family. Feminism is another one. You keep going on that one, but yeah, that's another way to divide the people is destroy the families, and you're seeing it manifest in so many ways.
Sex in the book is an interesting topic because I think that our view of how we think about it and its role in the culture and family creation and stuff is actually very different than what George Orwell was talking about when he was writing. Because we've gone through the sexual liberation of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and all the hedonism of today and stuff like that. But one of the things that really stuck out to me when it came to the idea of sex is that in the estranged marriage, Winston literally describes how his wife didn't look like she wanted to have sex with him, but she did it because she was just trying to have a child and then ultimately was unable to. And she used two phrases for it. The first was, let's make a baby. She never said, I want to have sex with you. She always said, let's try to make a baby. Or she's saying, try to do this for the party, aka try to make more people for the party, that kind of stuff. And it was again referenced later on in the book with Julia, where he mentions this to her, and she knew the phrase before he even said it. And it's an interesting thing where it's like when they're talking about Julia and Winston first hooking up, they do it a lot. That's one of the primary things that they do when they get together in secret, is that it started off with them doing it as a form of rebellion, but ultimately they do start to fall in love. And that's where Winston starts talking about describing Julia, the sense of her, the sense of her skin, how she smells, how she looks, all those kinds of things. And that ultimately gets to the point where before they go and get tortured, they straight up are like, yes, we love each other very much. And even torture will not make me not love you. But that ultimately gets disproven. So it's an interesting aspect of the book. But to Will's point, especially, I think that it's a suppression of masculine urge that is part of the stuff that is used to keep the proletariat is the word for the people not in the party, by the way. It keeps the proles or the proletariat kind of at bay or wrapped up with all the other crap going on, because they can't really focus on anything greater than themselves, aka family creation. So instead, they're just focused on watching all the traitors be hanged in the town square.
Yes.
Interesting stuff. All right. What do you guys think about the ideas of the telescreens in the world? Which is that, again, keep in mind, this book was written in 1949. This is well before even the idea of the surveillance state ever existed, or even before most modern technology was even thought of. But what do you guys think about the telescreen world, and what are some things he got right? What are some things he didn't quite get right? What do you see?
We have
YouTube
them right
analytics.
Here.
Yeah, we have them on social media for sure.
No, like your phone, like you
Yeah,
give permissions to this little camera up here, right? Like it's always listening. It's not for Big Brother. It's for big advertising. It's for whoever wants to buy the data. It's for whoever's got the biggest dollars and cents. But like we have the telescreens everywhere you go. Like you've got your devices on, unless you're a person who gets one of the unhackable phones or one of those things. And like, congratulations, you've already got it. So it exists. It's very real.
And our scrolling data too, like what we pay attention to, like what posts we're actually looking at.
Yep.
That's part of it. Yeah, it's our freaking browsing history. Like, yeah, it's all there. It exists, guys. Let's be real.
So some of the parallels for that one that I think we have seen come true is that people have become fearful of putting things out in front of the screens or the cameras and microphones, if you will, which in 1984 would get them arrested by the thought police for committing thought crimes. In certain parts of the world today, those are just real crimes. I'm looking at you, Great Britain, for arresting people for posting memes about things going on in the climate, stuff like that. I think that part he very much got correct, which is that there's a subtle fear that Big Brother is always watching. They're always listening. In fact, in the book, they talk about there's like these specific moments where people find just like these getaways, like when they're out on hikes or walking somewhere that's like clearly off the beaten trail, where they're like pretty sure there's no microphones, but like, I don't know, there might be. And those are the places where you see people actually have real conversations. This is where we see one of the first interactions with Julia and Winston outside of just the note passing and then trying to get reconnected.
Oh man, you had said something and I forgot about it. What were you saying like 2 minutes ago?
I was saying that I think British people getting arrested for memes.
Oh yes. Yeah. That's
accurate.
There's proposed like legislation for all that stuff. Like in the United States, like I don't know if it's legislation exactly, but I've seen a lot of like man on the street interviews where they go and they talk about like, hey, what do you think about the government trying to like ban memes nowadays? Or like, what do you think of the government trying to ban porn? Or what do you think of the government trying to ban like people expressing themselves or this, that, or the other thing? And it's like, it always boils down to the government tries to get rid of something because it's like, it's a disgust thing or it's an atrocious thing, or like, I can't believe these people are doing this terrible thing. And they're simply getting started on setting the precedent that we can get rid of a thing because it's gross. And then all we need to do is define the thing as gross. And then voila, we have carte blanche to get rid of it. Similar to like, you know, the death penalty. The government can put someone to death if they commit X, Y, and Z crime. and are found guilty in a court of law. Can court of laws be like flawed or whatever? Sure, absolutely. People get thrown in jail all the time. So like all we need to do is just plant some evidence or do something or have a flawed system or whatever, and then bam, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Next thing you know, the government's out there like executing people and killing them in a super duper slow and inefficient process. It costs everybody a bunch of money, and it's just a terrible, horrible thing where there's probably innocent people getting killed. So like once you start setting precedents for giving government authority to do a thing, they're going to take that authority, they're going to manipulate it, they're going to bastardize it, they're going to misinterpret it, they're going to get people that don't belong into it, and they're going to start doing bad stuff. So like the more power that you give the government, especially over speech and especially over people's rights to just do the things that give them sovereignty, the more problems you have.
Give an inch to take a mile.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Very true. I have a bit of I think there is an aspect that George Orwell didn't quite foresee when it comes to the screens and in particular social media, which is that I think a lot of people in today's day and age would say that they do feel kind of like trapped by the screens, so similarly to the people in 1984.
Yeah.
But there's two differences that I would really point to. Number one is that there's a desire and a willingness in today's society to be in front of the screens and be producing everything and try to get as many eyeballs as possible. In the book, there's the fear of attention. In today's society, it's an attention economy, which is that people are trying to get in front of it. I mean, we say that as a recording a live podcast here. And it's different in that sense, which is that I think that we don't operate in a totalitarian world as described in 1984, but I think that there are some twists on how everything is worked out from what George Orwell was talking about in the book versus how we carry out today's society. Social media is absolutely a massive part of everything that we do. I mean, we're doing it right now, as I mentioned. And I think that there is I do believe that like deep inside people, especially in first world countries that use social media to the degree that we do, I think there's a yearn for simpler times, as we were joking about earlier, about there's no AI. There was only quick notes. You had to go find some guy on a forum who wrote a summary for the book, so you don't have to read the whole thing over summer break. And there's kind of like the yearning to get away from it. I think that there's desperation to get away from it in the book, but I think there's like a small part of the human soul that like wishes for it to go back to simpler times. You guys think I'm off the mark here?
Not really, no.
Is that a fair criticism, or is it just completely different?
I don't know if it's just morning for me, but like, could you repeat that one more time?
Do you think I'm giving a fair criticism, or that the society in the book and our society are so fundamentally different? It's kind of just like throwing unnecessary shade at the author, being like, haha, you didn't see that.
Well, I mean, like it's 76 years old. So
we
can give him a little bit of grace, right?
Yeah.
He got so much right though. Like it's very eerie too.
Yeah.
It was it's hard. And yeah, there's some slight differences, but I think the crux of the point of the book stayed the same. Like the underlying, like, you know, the motives behind all the characters, like, yeah, you can pretty much correlate them to modern day. And we just had different tools to get there.
True. All right, I'll move on to my second difference that I found there, though, which is that I think that George Orwell uses the screens in the book as a form of oppression. I think it's possible to utilize these tools as a form of oppression, like we were talking about previously with the proposed Ministry of Truth and all the different social media platforms slapping disinformation and misinformation labels and everything. And then we also didn't mention that they also gave the U.S. government a backdoor to access it to flag certain stuff that they wanted taken down. But I'm going to point out that, especially in the modern era, the use of this technology has actually been one of the things that is used to overthrow governments, particularly totalitarian governments as well. For a little bit of a case study, during the Muslim Spring in Egypt, I want to say it was 2013, 2014, around that time, social media was the tool used by the people to spread dissent amongst the population, and that ultimately allowed them to congregate, coordinate, and eventually rise up and overthrow Gaddafi at the time. I only have this next bit of information from the stuff I've been learning about journalists, but In current day Egypt, if you try to travel there and you want to record stuff, they're very much against it. They're very much against people trying to record anything or really spread any information. And I would say that's actually also a response to what I just described with the Muslim Spring era over there, which is that all this stuff was used to coordinate uprising. The difference here is that in 1984, all that stuff was used to quell uprising. It was used to seduce the masses. It was used to disrupt the masses and keep them separated. Versus, I think we've seen the ability of people to use these things in the current era to do the opposite.
Yes, that's happening in Serbia. They had a huge protest about 6 weeks ago. That 300,000 people were gathering around the Capitol. So that had to be done in a certain way, probably social media. And the government is doing all sorts of things to actually like squash it. I'm hearing that they're deporting a lot of expats because they're thinking, oh, they're the ones that instigated all this. I'm like, okay. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's social media, if used correctly, can certainly be a tool of resistance as well. They haven't figured that out yet, or at least some of the governments haven't figured out how to prevent that from happening, to prevent resistance from happening. But yeah, I mean, it can go both ways, and you just have to use it properly because sometimes certain groups get banned. That happened during COVID. Some of the groups that I was a part of were in agreement with what I was thinking, and it wasn't newspeak, unfortunately, got banned. Or they got taken down or whatever, and it all disappeared, got vaporized. So you have to be careful that does happen as well.
That's true. By the way, 54 Cent did have one thing that he found that George Orwell didn't get right. He missed the fact that the government created bird spy cameras. There you go.
Shoot them.
Remember,
no
guys,
bird drones in 1984.
Birds aren't real. One of the I think that the point of your question, Zenith, is what happens when the government is the only one with a tool, and what happens when the people also have the same tool.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's what Orwell was talking about, is only the government's allowed to have this thing, which is something for the folks to consider when it comes to stuff like automatic weapons, when it comes to stuff like certain technology, when it comes to all sorts of things. If the government's the only ones allowed to use it and they're using it to suppress you and do bad things, then it's like, okay, well, this is something worth discussion. Now you can take that all the way to the extreme and be like, oh, atomic bombs. Like, why am I not allowed to own an atomic bomb? Right? Like you can, there's all sorts of nuance to this discussion, but the general idea is a pretty interesting one. And I think that it's important for folks to have the things that give them the most power to get their things done. Like if I have an atomic bomb, right, there's not a lot of will business that needs to be conducted that requires or necessitates an atomic bomb, right? Having a battleship, there's not a whole lot of like will business that needs to be conducted by having a battleship. What's a battleship for? It's for like force projections. Like, hey, I want to be able to shoot 30 miles with these fucking 16-inch guns or something like that, and be able to put a bullet the size of a human person that weighs 1,600 pounds. I want to be able to put that into something and, make it go poof or whatever, right? There's not a whole lot of will things that need to be done that include that. But when it comes to resisting tyranny, when it comes to protecting your family, like guns are important, guns are appropriate. When it comes to communication, having your own telescreen, in addition to the government having their own telescreens, that's very important. If you can communicate to the same degree that the government can communicate, whether you're able to market the communication as well as the government is a whole different aspect. But like, you need to be able to travel, you need to be able to speak, you need to be able to shoot, and you need to be able to transact. If you can't do those four things as well as the government can, then you're at a disadvantage, and the government could use those things to quell your ability to do so. So like at the crux, I think that the important distinction between Orwell's world and our world is that we have the same tools in many instances that the government has. And when the government is the only one with the stuff, then like that's problematic. So I would say that it's not a dig on Orwell to make this observation, as I think was what your question was, like, is it a fair critique? I would say it's not necessarily a fair critique because it didn't turn out the way he was warning. So I guess he kind of got the thing that he wanted, you know?
That's true. To look at the book in whole, based on the research I was doing, it seems that George Orwell wrote this book as a cautionary tale for totalitarian states. It wasn't specifically about anything in particular, although they were coming off the heels of World War II. The Nazis are quoted or referenced by name in the book. Socialists or communists, I believe, are also referenced by name in the book. But this is also well before Stalin. This is before Mao, and it's before a lot of the other stuff that we've seen in the second half of the 20th century there. So I don't think the book necessarily comes out hard against any it does come out hard against some particular regimes, but it also doesn't. It also gives a bit of a criticism towards like capitalism and democracy, which is that any of those different systems or parts of systems can ultimately become totalitarian states as described in the book and have similar ramifications and end of line effects.
I would agree. There's a lot of big words.
Yeah, what we're dealing with right now in the U.S. is more so crony capitalism, where all the biggest companies are trying to monopolize everything, and that's
it's not capitalism. Yeah,
it's not capitalism. It's very, very cronyism is a very rigged form of capitalism, favoring the select few. So that's what we're dealing with right now, and. True capitalism is there should be fair competition amongst everybody, but right now that's not the case. So again, people are unfortunately those two terms, crony capitalism and capitalism, they have a similar word in there. And that's where a lot of people that don't understand basic economics get that wrong, because what they're fighting against is not specifically capitalism. It's more capitalism that gets sullied by the government. And again, that's partly a product of the lack of education that we have in our public schools. They don't introduce these kinds of concepts. They just rather do gender theory as kindergartners, that kind of stuff. It's all distractions, and also trying to weaponize the kids to do heinous things, especially that was listed in the book. That was probably the most creepy thing in the book, was the daughter turning in the father. Like, that was bad.
Again, I mentioned it. This book was written before the rise of Maoist China. And that was one of the scary things about that whole movement, was the idea that your own family is not sacred, but the party is sacred. And you did see children kind of punching their ticket to join the red shirts was the party of the Chinese.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they would turn on their own family to kind of like scalp hunt and collect, and then turn in for their entry ticket into that party. So yeah, this was even before that time, but similar story here, equally as haunting.
This is one of the big gripes I have with the public education system, is that when the children spend more time with government-sponsored educators in a government indoctrination camp than they do with their family, learning family values and, correct ways of thinking, whatever that might be, like more ways of thinking that are more invested in the individual than on, the society as a whole. Like, I think that we get a different product. This is part of the reason why I'm so vehemently against all of the public schooling systems. And I talk about this in the podcast frequently, is like, you should homeschool your children. You should not let someone else plant seeds inside your kid's mind. Like, even if they mean well, or even if they want to do something else, it's up to the parents to make sure that the kid gets the education that's required to make that kid the best possible, person later on in life. It's like, hey, I've got this little, 18-year-old time bomb that I need to make sure that I put all the correct stuff inside in order for it to go and do great things later on and not explode and destroy things. In the book, the Parsons, the gentleman who's like, just kind of like a happy-go-lucky, dopey kind of person. He's Winston's neighbor. His wife is always having like things break around the house. They got 2 kids. The daughter turns on him, and the daughter and the son, like in one of the interactions earlier on in the book, Winston goes over there to fix their leaky sink, and he fixes it. You know, he makes their family's house better, and the Mrs. Parsons, she thanks him, and then like as he's leaving, the son like shoots Winston in the back of the head with like a slingshot or in the leg or something, and he's like, "You're a thought criminal, blah blah blah," because like all these kids are given all this indoctrination on like, hey, turn against your parents, hey, do this, do that, the other thing. And it's fun and it's exciting, and it's just what kids have to go and do is they have to go and be part of these camps, go be part of these clubs, go be part of these activities that give them more time and more indoctrination power than the parents do. And so once the children start revering Big Brother at a higher level of importance than they start revering their own parents, then they're going to do what Big Brother says rather than what the parents say, or that they're going to have more influence in that decision. Or in that direction, excuse me. So that was basically the end of my thought. It's just like it's terrifying to think about. And if you're a parent out there, you have to be very, very careful with the mind food that you give your children. So that's my thought.
And that was the point where I was trying to make with the destruction of the family. The parenting was really cringy. I think it was described. Parsons was kind of like a bloody idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. Yeah. And I look at the messaging on parents and TV these days, like the
Homer Simpson,
Family Guy, Homer
Peter
Simpson.
Griffin.
Yeah, like they're the fat idiots that don't know any better, and the wife has to correct everything, and it's just ass backwards. I mean, not saying that women are incorrect all the time, but I'm just saying like there's lack of strength in the parenting overall once the male figure's out of the picture, or at least is undermined. And it's no wonder that that's the end result of that, is that the kids will end up just turning on you and in whatever way, shape, or form. Like I met up with a friend on my travels recently, and his son. Hold on, I'm going to get this confused. I think the son turned into a daughter, and just like talking with him about it. Obviously, he's very, very frustrated and sad about it, but like that's like the byproduct of like it didn't happen overnight. Let's put it that way. It's a byproduct of the roles, the parental roles have been destroyed to some degree, or they've been taken away by who knows, the public school system likely was involved in that picture. But it happened over time. It didn't happen immediately. And yeah, it's pretty sad to hear those kinds of stories from a personal level, because you hear them all the time on social media and articles and stuff like that. But like from a personal level, like it's like you're hearing it from a person like in front of you. That's what happens. That's why we have such an influx of trans kids all of a sudden. Like this, it's almost like a disease in a sense, where it's just like it's increased for some reason. That doesn't just happen out of thin air. So again, like it comes down to the parenting. And that's this is my subspecialty. I see it a lot. The first thing I see when I see a kid the first thing I think about when I see a kid is I look at the parents and see what that dynamic's like, and that tells me a lot about what the kid's going through.
Yep,
that's fair. By the way, to hammer home the point about Parsons being the do for the Homer Simpson, if you will, before Winston is getting tortured, he's kind of in like the holding cell, and they just keep tossing more people in here, and Parsons gets tossed in there. He's like, Winston, what are you doing in here? They got you too? And then Winston says, what are you doing in here? He goes, thought crimes,
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, apparently I was sleep talking, and I said I don't like the party my daughter turned me in. Yeah. It was like, it's a bit of a slight moment of levity before you get to the really dark stuff. So that's what I got there.
Yeah.
Dr. Chen, you did say an important word earlier, and that was economics. Notably, one of the things that is not really covered heavily in this book, or as a primary driving factor in this, is economics. But I did want to ask you, gentlemen, if you saw any references to any sort of economic ideas, theories, people in the book, because I got 4 examples I want to run through, and I want to see what stands out in your guys' mind.
The flat was $5 a week, right? And then I think that book that he was selling was $2.
Less about numbers, more about like concepts.
Got it. Values of things too. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, we have to but when they were talking about the economics from the party's perspective, they're like, we got to make a shit ton of boots, and then we have to get rid of them all in war. We have to spend a bunch of money on war, so that way the economy is going. And it's like, aha, look at that. What's his name?
There you go. There's number one.
Eisenhower coming out of the woodworks, warning us about the industrial war machine. Frickin' not Smedley Butler. It might have been Smedley Butler warning us about the same thing. Whole bunch of people always warning us about, like, watch out for the war machine. They'll just make the money, they'll print the war, and they'll do that stuff. So that was one of them. And then, like,
you nailed it, military industrial complex. That is one of the things that gets explained in the book that Winston
the book inside
gets.
the book, right?
The book inside the book, exactly. It's where he talks about, he gets the explanation of why the party is doing the things that they do. The reason that they are constantly at war with people, even if they used to be their allies, is that they need to use the war to drive economic need inside the system, or demand, if you will. All right, what else we got?
It almost felt like money to the plebes, or the folk, the common folk, was not very relevant. The proles, there you go. It wasn't very relevant, like, to them.
What?
Like,
why was it not relevant?
Because they were just doing it for the party, like, and you know, that was their singular focus, was for the party, and
so how did they get things?
It was rationing, right?
Rationing.
Yeah,
there we go.
yeah.
There's another one. Rationing was used by the party to keep things scarce, keep the people hungry, keep them whipped up. So if you were dissatisfied with your rations, what was the other way they got things?
I don't remember this one.
If they were dissatisfied.
The black market, baby. There is a black market.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There you go. So inside of the system, we have rationing, we have the black market, we have the military industrial complex. I guess the last one I wanted to point out here is it's a group of people from the past. They're no more, but they might have an important name. They wore top hats. Who are those people?
Top hats. The Ministry of
British?
Plenty? No.
Nope. I'm referring to the capitalists.
Oh, the capitalists. Okay.
Do you remember how they described the capitalists in the book?
Not quite.
All right. So the capitalists are described as a group of people from a bygone era during the rising of the party. They were described as people that owned everything. They wore top hats. They owned everything from the factories to the people inside of the factories. They could tell you what you do. By law, you had to refer to them as sir. And they owned everything, including the people, so heavily that this is in the part 1 of the book where Winston is talking about his dissatisfaction with his wife and having sex with her. He references the capitalists, and he says the capitalists were so rich and so powerful they could literally sleep with any of their employees at will, and they couldn't say no. Eventually, though,
part, but yeah,
it's a bit early on.
Right.
I wrote it down because they used the word, so it's not an accurate description of capitalism or the author's interpretation, like realistic political interpretation of capitalism, but it was a concept that they use because they showed the idea that the capitalists were in charge. Now the party is in charge. What happened to the capitalists, kind of the rumorings that they mentioned in passing, is that capitalists died out and people just believe that they kind of got absorbed into the party. So even as the group in charge shifted, did they really shift, or did they just kind of get absorbed into the next group at the top?
Yeah. I have one more, actually. Going back to the rations thing, the manipulation of economic data. So, like, when they said about the chocolate, because I was referring to the chocolate, they initially said, oh, your chocolate rations are from 30 grams to 20 grams. And then, like, literally 24 hours later, they said, oh, now we're going to increase your ration to 20 grams. And then everybody was cheering all of a sudden. It's like, it went from a negative connotation to a positive one with the same data, with this, like, the same number. I mean, you can go with so many examples of that with what's the number that they love to use in the presidential elections of the job creation numbers and all that shit. Like, they would love to manipulate that data a lot. Do
you remember when they had to revise the numbers down during the final era of the Biden administration? Do you happen to remember how many they had to decrease their estimate by?
No, I don't.
Oh, it was 1 million.
Oh, Jesus.
Yep. We covered that on the Sunday show.
Oh, nice.
We're like, wow, these estimates suck. It's almost like they've been cooking these books for a reason.
Yeah. And the other number that gets misconstrued a lot was the unemployed rate.
But
Like, because
Dr. Alan Chen, what is unemployment? Who even knows? Why can't we just make up the number?
I mean, there's a specific formula for certain terms, and a lot of times they get like mushed up together, and people don't understand. Like, if you actually know the formula, and this is why it's important to know how to get to the answer rather than the answer itself. Like, this is why you need to show your work. That's why it's so important, rather than just knowing the number at the very end. I am not an economic expert, but because you have to figure out it's the denominator is actually people that are looking for work rather than just people that are not working. Those are two different things. So if you're a stay-at-home mom or dad and you're not looking for work, you're not inputting that denominator. So like that's where the biggest differences lie. So that's
there's also other factors into it, like how long have
Absolutely.
you been working for work? Are you able to work? All these things have been slowly manipulated over the years. And again, we try to keep up with them as much as possible on the Sunday show whenever they change. But there's also another famous one from the good old early 2020 era, which was they changed how you calculate the M2 money supply. Why would you care about changing that definition?
It
I don't know,
doesn't.
maybe you're trying to show something else.
It doesn't matter who votes. It matters who counts the votes. It doesn't matter what the data is. It matters who is interpreting the data and how they interpret the data. That's like the whole crux of this point that I think that you're getting to is like, we could have all of the unemployment data, all of the Brave New World, 1984 data. We could have all of this stuff. And the simple fact is it matters who's in charge that gets to read the stuff that makes the decision. You know, this is one of the things that Brendan talks about a shit ton on the DGen Roundtable when it comes to the Fed is like they butcher how they read the data. They change it often. They change the goalposts. They cherry pick the data, right? Like these are very real things that happen. So like what was the example in the book that we were referring to with
chocolate?
Changing the chocolate rations.
Yeah. It's like, hey, like we're going down from 30 into 20, but like, oh no, we are pleased to announce that we're now at 20% chocolate rations, you know, and it's going to be like awesome and fantastic. And there's great news and everybody's celebrating. It's just like, man, what a fucking world. So
you guys heard of the quote, there are lies, damn lies, and then there's statistics.
You stole that. I was about to ask Will if he remembers the famous Mark Twain quote, and that's the one.
Yeah.
True. All right, gentlemen, we are about halfway through. So, Will, grab your thing. Let's do the thing, if you will.
Yes, it is time.
We got a few stacking up.
It is time, ladies and germs, for some chat motherfucking shout outs. So, Mr. Zenith, would you like to go ahead and read off? Here we go, starting with this gentleman right here.
Oh, Hexagon Lost in Asia. He says, hey, DGens, thanks for the show today. Every time I see Alan Shed, I get jacked up. TRT for life. You got fans. You got fans, my man.
I'm famous, apparently. I got an emoji too, apparently, in the DGen Roundtable emoji set.
I made an emoji of Alan, so there we go.
From Wonder Wolf, I will admit this is a reference I do not understand, but I'm sure it's a funny one.
Oh, I know what I know what it is.
America was disabled by a disabled lesbian bigot.
Discovered by the changing history. We were talking about
the changing of history.
Like Disney with all the different different races and genders of people on the shows and things.
Snow White's black, apparently. Yes.
Snow White's black. Yeah. I mean, hey, it works, I suppose.
It is what it is.
Here we go.
Good friend of ours, Mr. Moon Pilled Rational Optics. Good to see you, sir. He says, what's up, gentlemen, with the whiskey glass. I know he's a whiskey connoisseur. He says, great book recommendation. Agreed, sir. It is a classic. I know it's a little outside of our usual scope of books that we cover here, but I figured it's important enough. It's relevant enough. And I had not read it before this. I was hoping to go into this and try to find some sort of like central bank digital currency analogy, but I was unable to find one.
Not yet.
Not yet anyways. Brown, Farmer J says the government is your friend. What? What do you mean? The party is your friend.
Big brother. I love Big Brother.
He's here to protect you
and
give you your chocolate. Yeah, me too. I'm very much in love with Big Brother.
All right, gentlemen. One of the big questions I had for you guys after reading this book is I wanted to get your take on what you think the author is describing as the human spirit. Because I think he describes a sort of journey, if you will, for the will and the soul of Winston. Because he kind of goes through various phases throughout the entire book. I mean, it's written into 3 parts for, I think, a reason. So what do you guys think the author has to say about like the human spirit?
It's a tough one. That was a tough one to swallow because unfortunately Winston gave in. And one of the things that I guess I don't like to say this, but like most ordinary people would fall back upon is that in the end, all you care about is yourself. I mean that's mostly true. I would say. And that's why I like the brotherhood, the concept of the brotherhood that was brought in the book. It became also an important idea. You know, who would you, a very strong brotherhood. Who would you die for, what would you die for? And they were both Julia and Winston were saying that they would die for, or they were prepared to die, to put some spark into a resistance against the party. They're prepared to die, and it turns out they weren't.
And I think that in this instance, the dying is easier than what actually happened. Like the idea of dying is a lot easier than suffering forever. And I think that a lot of people could agree with that. And that's what essentially broke Winston and what presumably broke Julia as well, is that like, yeah, they were ready to die, but they weren't ready to suffer for the rest of their lives, under like excruciating pain. Like one of the things that if you ever listen to any interviews of anyone that conducts torture techniques is that everyone breaks at some point. And it's like, that's a very real thing. Nobody is immune to that. And so like, yeah, getting the death sentence would be the easy way out. It would be like, oh yeah, we don't really care about actually getting the confession out of you. We don't care about the other thing. Like we're just here to like, make you stop being a problem or something like that. But you can force people to change when you apply enough pain or apply enough discomfort or take away enough of the stuff that they've done. Like take a look at like what happens down in Guantanamo Bay. Like, do we know? Probably not. Is it terrible? Probably. Take a look at what happens over in the El Salvadorian prison. Do we know what happens down there? Probably not. Is it terrible? Almost certainly. Take a look at what happens to like the people that ISIS captures, like their beheadings and their torturings and their executions and all that stuff. Incredibly horrific. For any of you guys that really want to go down the deep rabbit hole, take a look at Japanese Unit 731, right? That's one of the reasons why we know so much scientific stuff about the human body as we do, is the horrendous experiments that were conducted by the Japanese during World War II, specifically Japanese Unit 731 with Chinese prisoners of war and American prisoners of war. Some horrendous stuff. The original point of your question was, what
do you think the author is trying to say about the human spirit? It sounds like you think the author is conveying that everyone will break.
Everyone will break, yes. And I think that that's important for people to recognize is you're not Superman. You're not insurmountable. So stop this scenario from happening by, like, you can't stop the torture, but you can help stop the society get to the point where it would use this type of torture to do these sorts of things to people, to individuals. So, like, understand that you're fallible. You're human. You're not some crazy guy that can stand up to all the torture. Everyone will give in at some point. Everyone's got a price. Everyone's got some sort of thing that will get them. So that's a very real thing that I think would be important for people to swallow. That's my take personally.
All right, so let's break down the journey a little bit here. So we start off part 1. Winston this is before he goes through everything. We're starting off at baseline. Baseline, arguably, the dude has like TikTok brain, which is he feels he can't have a coherent thought for more than 15 seconds without getting yelled at by a telescreen. He's just kind of like drifting through life, just feels like a husk effectively. And then he still remembers all the differences and can see all the lies, and it just kind of more irks him. And he slowly grows to start resenting the party. And then we get to the part 2 shift. They're the second act, if you will, which is where he meets Julia and he finds someone else to share this idea with. And they like under the breath talk about how they hate the party and they want to take it down. They want to join the Brotherhood. They want to overthrow the party. And you start to see that defiance, and the defiance is building up, and it culminates with, before they're literally hauled off to the gulag effectively, is that they're saying that they will torture us. They will try to get us to turn on each other. They will ultimately kill us. And at this point, they do kind of make that vow, which is like they will never get me to not love you. And then even the way that they talk about it in the books is like they both recognize what they're doing inside of the system, and they refer to each other as I'm already a dead man, which is like I'm already dead. Like I'm going to die. They're going to kill me, that sort of thing. And then we get to part 3 where we actually get to where they are taken and they are put through the torture and the subject and the punishment. And whether it's just being left in isolation where you can't tell time of day, whether you're above or underground, and then ultimately when you're strapped to the car battery, or ultimately when they try to feed you to your worst fear. And at that point, that's where we see it really break. The only, I guess, caveat or nuance I'm going to put on this is that I agree with you guys, which is that the author is trying to convey that people in this sort of system will ultimately break. You will be broken. You will become the husk. You will learn to love Big Brother eventually as you drink yourself into a stupor at an old age. But I think that one of the things I found it particularly interesting that something like this was not included in the book, especially considering that the author literally just went through World War II. Granted, I don't think he fought in the World War because he was older at that time, but he literally had seen everything going on in World War II. He was a British citizen, and he's right there, and he saw all of it. So he saw all of the sacrifices that his countrymen and all the people fighting with and against them were making for their nation to win that sort of war. It's World War II, I think, is very studied because it's very well documented, but also it's very much tales of heroism and people making ultimate sacrifices for greater goods. But none of those kind of themes are actually represented in the book. They're like vaguely and briefly explored through the concept of the Brotherhood, but it almost feels like that's kind of like a bait and switch. Like they're people who fell for like a street con man playing the shell game or whatever. They're like, oh, which one is the Brotherhood under? And they pull up all of them. They're like, lies. There never was a Brotherhood. We just wanted to trap you.
Yep.
So for me, it seems that I think what the author is trying to say is that without purpose and direction in some sort of moral compass, you will ultimately break. Because I think he really conveys that Winston lives to survive. That is his number one goal, is survival, which is that I think he's trying to propose the idea that if Winston was living for something other than survival, he might not have broken and ultimately have gotten the bullet in the back of the head that he was wishing for. There's even an interesting section there where one of the things they talk about is that once you're inside of the Brotherhood, if you ever get taken into the gulag, someone will try to slip you a razor blade while you're in there so that you can kill yourself before they break you or something. And that was an interesting thing that was thrown in there.
I don't think it's about survival. I think that Winston's chasing comfort the entire time because he accepted that he was a dead man. So did Julia, and he dreamed of having the razor passed to him through so that way he could feel the cold steel against his veins for one last time before he bleeds out and dies. Winston didn't want to suffer. He wasn't opposed to death. He didn't want to suffer. And that was the thing that broke him, was like the ultimate fear of like having to face the rats, like chew his face off and whatnot. Like, I disagree with you, Zenith. I don't think that the author that Winston was concerned with survival. I think Winston was concerned with comfort. That's the thing, and that's why like they made the pact. Like, oh yeah, they referred to each other as dead men because that's easy. You know, it's easy to die compared to be tortured for the rest of your life. That's not something that they were ready and willing to do. They were ready and willing to die, allegedly, if you take them at their word, making the death pact and kind of referring to each other as you know, like we're dead men walking and blah de da de da. They're going to catch us at some point, right? They expected to die. They expected that it would be like no more suffering, quick, easy, over with, or what? Like maybe it's a little bit drawn out, but they weren't expecting like just continuous torture for the rest of their life, which is the thing that eventually broke both of them. Because there's a point in there where Winston meets up with Julia after they get out of the Ministry of Peace, and they they talk to each other and they both say like, yeah, I betrayed you. And then it's kind of like sad because like Winston goes through this whole like becoming basically a Holocaust survivor, kind of like just an emaciated human being that's just gross and absolutely like ghoulish or whatever. And then he gets out and he gets fat and happy and he's drinking his victory gin and, you know, just hanging out and playing chess and like loving Big Brother for the rest of his life. And then Julia, she like stops being the beautiful, supple young woman and she turns into like basically a fat, disgusting old like hag after her time in the ministry of peace, right? So after they're tortured and they both give each other up, they both like go down this path of unattractiveness and path of like being terrible and awful again. And like they were ready to die in their higher selves. They were drinking good coffee, they were enjoying real chocolate, they were having all of the nice things that they were able to smuggle out and have in their little flat bedroom apartment while they were like romping around having sex and hating on Big Brother and stuff. So I would disagree in that, like, I don't think they were afraid of death. I think they were afraid of discomfort, and that's what ultimately broke them. That's what ultimately, you know, took them away. So something for people to think about. That's my cynical take. I don't know. Alan,
that's
do you have...
fair. I was gonna say I actually have 2 points for you, Will, on that one.
Okay.
So one of the things I was trying to figure out when I was reading the book is I wanted to know what the intention or the goal or the desire for Big Brother or the inner circle of the party was. I feel like it wasn't really super well explained outside of they're doing it for power's sake. They want power to be powerful. And there is a slight other description, which is that if you're in the inner circle of the party, you get a lavish lifestyle. It's like the bourgeoisie of the communists. Yeah, thank you. Where it's like you literally have like lavish penthouses. You actually get to turn the telescreens off. Winston can only dim it down. You get all the food you want. There's no rationing. You get whatever you want. You can have sex with people for the sake of having sex with people. So for me, it's like I don't know if we're trying to I don't know if I'm trying to read too much like IQ onto Winston here, but it's like if he really was after comfort, I think the correct answer for him would have been get close with O'Brien, not from the idea of joining the Brotherhood, but knowing that O'Brien is part of that inner circle. He's part of that world. So if he wants the comfort, then O'Brien is actually the ticket to the comfort.
For sure. I think Winston was more of an idealist in that sense.
That's fair. The other thing that pointed me to the interpretation that I gave you before was that the concept of God is mentioned a few times in the book. And one of the particular ones is that there is a guy who actually gets thrown into the gulag with Winston. He's like, hey, wait a minute. You were at the Ministry of Truth with me. Why are you here? And he said that he committed a thought crime because he was unable to transcribe the word God into Newspeak because he was trying to transcribe poetry. And one of the things that was in the poem was the word God. He was saying that I can't convey the idea and I can't make it rhyme in any sort of Newspeak. It is what it is, and I can't get rid of it. So they threw me in here for that. And they also mentioned in the book that God is something that was largely fought against by the party. So for me, I was reading into that and using that as part of the interpretation for my interpretation of human spirit from the author is that there are these things that the party has destroyed to get people to that final endpoint. And that because that original starting point was destroyed, it means that that starting point would have potentially been able to get people to avoid the endpoint where they ended up. I could also just be reading into that way too much.
I forgot about the God part. Go ahead, Alan.
Well, okay. Well, now that they're on that topic, I mean, I interpret it as like when you don't have a center of principles or morality, and for a lot of people, it centers around God. I mean, that's where you can have all these things take place when there is a void of a higher power that you can surrender to. Then it eventually becomes a different idol, aka the party, that takes that void. And I think, they talked a good game, Winston and Julia. They talked a good game in terms of like, yeah, we'll die for the resistance and we're ready to do what it takes and all that. But it turns out that their principles and their principles were weak in general. And this is the end byproduct of your a weakness in your principles is being fat and happy and just going into hedonism and just basically being told what to do, and succumbing to whatever forces are that maybe bestow you, that you're just succumbing to the external forces, and you're not really having any thoughts of your own. That's kind of the end result of when you're not principle centered and you're just it's not as strong as you think it is. And that was certainly a test at the very end, was the ultimate test of whether that they meant what they said. And it turns out, unfortunately, that they didn't.
It's true. Even if you don't want to go down the God and religion point of it, I think that the reason it's included as the final thing you have to be converted from is that the idea of being able to get you to love Big Brother means that you have to stop loving anything else in your life to be able to accept that kind of love for Big Brother. And the idea of love as conveyed in the book is it's like the last thing, it's the final betrayal of you putting anyone else before yourself, which is that you are so focused on your own survival, you are willing to throw the people that you allegedly care about in front of you. And that's the final point of that test, which is that it's not about saying, make it stop. It's about saying, I will throw the people I care about in my way so that I don't have to experience this.
Yep.
I think it's that getting rid of that last selflessness or that last caring about anything outside of yourself, which is the final key.
And that was his ultimate weakness, and that was his ultimate downfall. Yeah.
Yep. Same thing for Julia. She did the same thing too. And it's what they do with everybody that goes into the infamous Room 101, the room with your greatest fear that they know because they've been watching.
You guys want to hear a really dark take that I heard when I was in the Marine Corps about this sort of thing? So, you know how there's like tons of Medal of Honor recipients that like jump on a grenade and like, save their squad and blah-de-da. One, there was a gunny I was hanging out with one time, and he was cracking jokes, and he's like, yeah, for every private and they're always privates and lance corporals. They're never like, gunnery sergeants or sergeants major, or like, they're never like captains or lieutenants or whatever jumping on grenades. He was like, for every private that's jumping on a grenade, there's a staff sergeant over there that's pushing him. That's like, I'm going to go home to my family. You'll get a medal. Don't worry about it. And it's just like, oh man, that's dark, but that's kind of funny. It's like, better you than me. I'm going to go home and like, I'm going to live to see my family and stuff. And it just kind of like takes away from the story of all of these Medal of Honor recipients. And, I don't mean to disparage anyone, because I doubt that it's like incredibly true, but the idea still persists that, oftentimes we will like, we're fortunate that we're wealthy enough to never have to be put in that sort of scenario where we have to make that difficult choice. Winston and Julia weren't wealthy enough. So like, there's a lesson in there, which is like, become wealthy so you don't have to like deal with these problems, or like don't go to war and be a private, in front of people dropping grenades in front of you or something like that. But people do sacrifice those that they love on occasion. And I hope to God that no one I know or care about ever is put into that sort of situation. And if they are, I hope they make the right decision, whatever that might be. And it's just a very real and unflattering truth that exists, is that not everybody's gonna make it. Not everyone's gonna have the stuff that we wish that we did have. So it's my 2 cents on that little thing. And there's a little fun and dark story for you guys there from some of the more flattering parts of my Marine Corps career.
Look, military humor is its own kind entirely, largely dark humor aspect.
Very dark.
When you're telling us about that, you reminded me of a military toast that my dad actually taught to me, which is that it's to lying, cheating, and stealing. It's lying to your enemies and your captors to protect your brothers in arms, cheating death so that you can live to fight another day, and stealing the heart of a woman you love so you have someone to come back to.
There you go. I'll drink to that.
All right, gentlemen, what else we want to talk about? I apologize. There wasn't as much economic stuff in here because, it's the crypto cast, so we got to try to find a way to get in there. But
there really wasn't a whole lot of I read this book a long time ago, and it's just kind of like the main principle that I can stick my finger on is like, don't give your government power. because they'll probably abuse it and they'll probably fuck it up. So chase your own sovereignty. Don't give it to other people. Don't give it to Big Brother. Protect stuff that's important. What about you, Alan?
There are a lot of indirect things related to economics and just personal freedom in general, and just kind of seeing the world as it is. I mean, economics. The only way economics functions is through people. Like otherwise, it's just an inanimate object. Money's sitting there. Okay, great. I mean, but it has to flow through people for it to be worth anything. Mm-hmm. And this is just a big case study or proposed case study back in the day of what could happen when the party is all that matters and just economics kind of is semi meaningless, and how that happens essentially.
Yeah, to take it a little further on that, I mean, it's one of the famous quotes in the book, which is that freedom is slavery. And I'm pretty sure they reference it, which is that if you are free, then you are a slave to trying to provide for yourself. But if you are pretty much in the party, then things are provided for you. And isn't that real freedom? Because you're no longer struggling. And
there's another quote about freedom, by the way, but besides that one, is freedom is holding on to memory. Which in that book, that makes total sense, because you're when you can have that past information and can use it to propel you into the present and future, like especially in that era where all this shit was destroyed. That was sort of like the corollary to that statement of freedom is slavery. Like, it's an interesting quote to think about, peruse through, I guess, after the fact.
It's true.
Because I don't think we mentioned this actually. This is the biggest part of the book was where at the very beginning. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's like the crux of the book, really. Like, it's, and we're seeing it right now with all the disinformation stuff. I think we did talk about it a little bit, but that's like, to me, that was like the biggest, one of the like top 3 themes of the book is that. So I'll repeat it one more time slowly. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past.
I think you dropped the line earlier in the show, which was that history is written by the victors. Yeah. And in this case, the only victor is the party. So they control the history.
Yep. The winners create the history books. So think about that one for a sec.
Yeah. Question.
They're the good guys, apparently. They're the good guys, apparently, too.
Like we could apply this to all history ever, and the more recent the history it is, the more likely we are to get firsthand experiences and stories and knowledge and stuff. But if you can get enough people to print the same thing and teach it, then, things get memory hold. Things get shoved into that little fire tube, and the better version becomes the correct thing. I encourage you guys to watch foreign videos about wars that America fights. Like I recently watched a Chinese movie about the war in Korea, the United States Korean War, and they presented it from a totally different perspective than America does. And it was a good movie. It was entertaining. It was a great story, but it's like, oh wow, there's like other instances. What was it? The 49th parallel or what, the 59th parallel or whatever, that the US crossed in South Korea, that was like, hey, don't cross this or else we're going to like fight you and kill you. And then like stuff happens and yada, yada. But like, there's different perspectives that exist out there, and it's important to be well-rounded if you want to be well-rounded. And it's important to, feed yourself the mental diet of the circle jerk fest that you're already in, if that's the thing that's important to you too. Like there's usefulness to being open-minded. There's usefulness to being closed-minded, right? If you're closed-minded about something that works and you want to continue doing it and not be open-minded about something that's going to destroy things, then hey, that's the right way to go. And if the closed-minded thing isn't generating you results and the open-minded thing might do it, then it might be time to switch that one. So like there's a point and a purpose to everything, but just understand that like not everything is solid. The stuff that you learned in school about the history books could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know if it is. Again, this is part of why I call everything a campfire story. That's why that's like a big part of my life is like everything's just a fucking campfire story. You don't know who is the Ministry of Truth. Were they doing a really good job with truth when Walter Cronkite was reporting the news and he was like the only one on the big networks that was telling everybody in America what was actually going on? Do we know what's happening over in other parts of the country where we don't have like our own boots on the ground? Do I even know what's happening next door? When the neighbor comes over and tells me a story about some atrocious thing that's happening in that house that implicates another person, then it's like, hey, do I believe them? Do I believe the other person? Yada, yada, yada. Like, it's all just a bunch of stories. And like, we just kind of have to suss it out as we go. So just keep, I don't want to say a healthy skepticism, but just understand that everything's stories. And many people are constantly trying to tell the truth, but they're also trying to further their own agenda. So just keep that in mind. And that's all that I got. It's all campfire stories, bro.
There you go. I got a question. Go for it.
Oh, sorry. Back in college, I heard one of my history teachers was retiring. So this is when I actually cared about high school still. Now I don't talk to anybody in high school. But anyway, that's not the point. So I heard my U.S. history teacher was retiring, and shockingly, in high school, I was math and science all the way, and I freaking hated English, history, or sorry, we call it social studies, which is wrong. It should be called history. Another topic for another day. But those classes, the humanities or whatever, I absolutely hated those classes. I just did it to get my grade and move on. And I wrote him a letter because like they were asking some alumni to say like, hey, write some stuff for his retirement. And rather than me congratulating him for retiring, I actually wrote an apology letter. I apologized to him for not recognizing how important his class was. And I can't remember what the context was as to why I was motivated to do that, but maybe been a breakup, but anyway, it probably is. Anyway, I apologize for that. And so yeah, for not paying attention very well, and also like, basically scraping by to get my A-. And then also cheating on the tests. I fully admitted to that. And he actually wrote back to me, and I was like, that was a great apology. Like, and thank you for your understanding. And actually, like, that was, he was sort of expressing like that was like one of the best things, like best, because he's got a ton of letters from that retirement party. That was one of the best things that he saw, because I admitted to the fact that like, that this stuff doesn't really interest everybody, but also at the same time though, like now I understand the actual importance of it and why he was so passionate about teaching the subject. He was a good teacher, by the way. I just didn't take advantage of that. He was an excellent teacher, but it comes to show you like history is important, guys. Like history specifically, social studies is a completely different thing. These are my education days that I picked that from, but history is extremely important. I mean, even if they are campfire stories, like it's still good to like hear these different perspectives and kind of gauge in your mind as to what kind of, what kind of story to form in your head, so that you can use that information to, one, not repeat history, especially the bad parts, but also how to apply it to your life and see what you can do to not have the same fates happen to you. It's become much more important and relevant these days than ever, especially in medicine, for example. Like there's some things that we used to do in medicine that we don't even think about now that worked.
Like leeches.
Yeah, like that's
it maybe doesn't work, but we used to do it.
But just in diet in general, like
yeah.
we used to do, like, just take diet for example. Like there's some things that we never thought existed 50 years ago, and now they exist now, and all of a sudden we have chronic disease. Those kinds of things, like remembering what we did in history is extremely important, because we need to learn from that and be able to apply it to what we're dealing with now. So again, medicine history, like I still didn't like it, but then now I understand, like, okay, yeah, I gotta know who actually was involved in these things, and and what were the motivations behind it in the first place. It's extremely important no matter what you do.
True. I think your story about your interests going through high school and then caring more about history, I think are actually kind of like a logical progression, honestly, because I think most guys have this kind of progression, and I'll explain what I mean. I think there's the meme of when guys turn 30 and they turn their entire personality into either being a World War II history buff, a Civil War history buff, or care about trains or something like that. And I think that as a young guy, when you're going through high school and like even middle school, I think that you are going through history, and I think it's very important to have that knowledge base kind of like steeped into you from the beginning. So later on, when you realize it's important, you have it. You don't have to go back and relearn everything. Granted, you're going to go back and find even more information about everything specifically. But when you're at that age, I think you just want to work. You want to learn how the world works and how you can do things inside of the world. So I think it's why, guys, we really focus on like mathematics and engineering and stuff like that, because it's like I'm more interested in trying to like learn how I can duct tape everything in the garage together to make something go boom really cool, or how can I make my car go faster, that kind of stuff. And then only after, it's the classic of the scientists were so busy asking you if we could do it, and forgot to ask should we. And then once you start to you cover that base, then you can start getting to those higher level concept questions, which is like, why are we doing this? Did someone else try this in the past? How'd that go for them? That's where you really get into that. So for me, it feels like that logical progression of like, learn how the world, like learn what you can do inside the world, then learn why you shouldn't exactly do all those things because the people before you tried it and they're no longer here. So I think it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yep. It's good science. I like that.
All right, gentlemen, I got two final topics I want to bring up with you guys. So the final part of the book, I think we get a lot of exposition from the torturer. One of the things that he talks about is the idea of we don't make martyrs here at the Ministry of Peace or the Ministry of Love, whatever it was. They were saying that they learned from the past that during the Crusades, they made more zealots than they actually persuaded people. Because if people stuck to their guns and stuck to their religion, that's when you gave them the sword. But the people that actually converted were the ones that you kept alive. Additionally, I think it was they either referenced the socialists or the Nazis with a very similar thing, which is like they tried to exterminate the people, and when you exterminate them, you prove them correct and you make them martyrs. So specifically in the book, the reason that they did not kill Winston is that they said, we have never failed here at the ministry. We have successfully converted each and every person that comes through the door, and ultimately they're released into society. Granted, we will kill them one day. But when that comes, who knows? You don't know. We might not even know until we decide to do it. But we will always convert you, because if we kill you, it makes you a martyr.
Yes.
I felt like one of those portions in the book where the author was really kind of like laid it on heavily, or like getting as close as you can to like George Orwell sticking his face through the page and just speaking right at you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think about that portion?
I think that's absolutely accurate. And I think that that's what happens nowadays is people don't just get fucking smoked. People get their character assassinated. People get their people get, you know, what's the word? Not reconstituted. They get reformed. They get so much pressure applied to them that they turn into the thing that people want them to turn into. Right.
Yeah.
We no longer live in the world of killing people and making them a martyr, because then you just further their cause. Then you're just like, aha, now there's a concrete example. It's like, no, we've got to vaporize you and wipe you completely so that no one knows you existed, or we have to like reintroduce you back into the cult. So I thought that was absolutely correct. And that leads sort of into the question that I wanted to ask, which is like, is O'Brien is O'Brien a teacher or is he a villain? You know? And so like, I thought that was pretty fun little take there. But Alan, do you have thoughts on the?
I'd call O'Brien a villain. Yeah, I call O'Brien a villainous teacher.
Yeah,
he's kind of both.
Teacher. Yeah,
in the direct sense. Can't remember who said this, but it starts with. Actually, the book said this too. Aren't all confessions fabricated?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean something to that effect. Where like,
I think it's especially true for the book, because when they start torturing him, they're doing it to try to get confessions out of him, and he was confessing to all sorts of things he's never even done. Like I think at one point he mentioned that he like confesses to the murder of his own mother, even though he knows full and well that his mom is alive and that he didn't do that, but he just wanted to say anything impossible to make the torture stop.
So you can see this from the Kavanaugh whatever that was. I mean, it wasn't even a trial. It was like just like a Senate hearing or something like that, way back in, I can't remember when that was. It was I think Trump's first term.
Confirmation hearings. That was 2017 or 2018.
Yeah, like those kinds of character. It was before COVID for sure. Those kind of character assassinations, that's where it all starts. And then they accuse you of the wildest things, especially the things that I think we were mentioning this before, like were not terribly taboo back then, but now like all of a sudden, like they're rewinding, they're using the past against you. In that
applying
regard.
Today's principles against like historical difference, you know?
Right. And then the next thing comes like, oh, you know, some woman is saying, oh, like, he harassed me or he R-worded me or whatever, like that kind of thing. And then they may have she may have been paid to say something like that. Because in the light of Me Too, there's that piece to it where those things get taken, unfortunately, seriously without you're guilty until proven innocent in that regard. Then if you resist that, then ultimately comes death. And it makes you wonder, putting my tinfoil hat back on, it makes you wonder, like, where do people draw the line, especially where does this party draw the line in this book, between doing the conversion versus doing the actual vaporizing? Like where does that line drawn? Are they vaporized when they see a point of no return? They were able to pass all the tests that they put in room 101. Maybe like if they find like they've realized that they can't convert this person, then that's when they get vaporized. Like that could be a possibility. Where that's your fate when you pass all the tests. It's like, oh, you go through all this torture and then okay, you're dead now. So, or you're vaporized, excuse me, or you're non-people, whatever they call it. So yeah, it's
based on what I read, I think the book has 3 answers for that question. Answer number 1 is they try to convert as many people as possible. Answer number 2 is that some of these people never existed in the first place and were actually fabrications of the party. I want to say Goldstein, who was like the former political figure who
those 3 people,
marked as a villain. They're like, oh yeah, these people never existed. Like we just made them up to try to subvert the public and get them to think what we wanted to think. But then there are also some of those people where you actually do see them get vaporized. Like Syme, the coworker of Winston, he actually does get vaporized. And I don't know if
we don't know much about him really.
I mean, he's kind of a loud mouth.
He was the wordsmith, and he was super into the party, but he was too smart and too good. He was too
smart for his own good. Yeah.
And Winston even said, like, I could probably see this guy getting vaporized at some point. He's just too intelligent.
Oh yeah, like part 1, he says that.
Yeah. I see the periscope.
Yeah, food. But yeah, maybe that's what it takes to get vaporized.
So, Will, I'll answer your question. I think that O'Brien it's as close as you can get to the manifestation of pure evil in the book. The reason I say that is because I think O'Brien is the highest ranking member of the party that we see in the book. Because you never find out who Big Brother is. You kind of find out that Big Brother is just an idea. There's really no like singular figure. It's just a machination of the inner party that is used to control the public. O'Brien, as far as I can remember, is the only real person inside of the inner party that we get like interactions with. And then on top of that, he's pretty high up inside of the thought police as well. I mean, the fact that he's going through all of this, he's done this to lots of different people. It shows that he has a lot of experience. He is experienced in doing it. And based on what I mentioned earlier, which is like the reason that the party does what it does is that it does so to propagate their own means. And it does so because they believe that there's power in holding power and they do it for power's sake. So I think that because the author wrote this book as a cautionary tale, I think that O'Brien in the book is the manifestation of the most evil thing that the author could have culminated without like writing the literal devil into it or something.
That's a good answer.
I think he does act as a teacher, but from the actual like tropes of the book and what the whole point of it is like, yes, this is the face of evil.
He's the villain that's giving you the lesson. Yeah. That's good. Did you cover both of your points you wanted to hit on, Z?
I believe I covered one of them. The second one I had was, I said, all right, Will, I accept your ending. If your ending of the book is true, which is that Winston is not actually killed, but his brain is metaphorically killed, and now he has a love for the party. If we roll it back like 2 pages or even like a half a page, the reason that he falls down with this idea for love for the party now, or love for Big Brother, is because they have defeated East Asia in the war. And I think that if you really wanted to read into it, this might be a little tinfoil hat theory. You could argue that that interpretation of the ending is actually a critique on nationalism. And I think that militaristic nationalism in particular, because the author has lived through World War I, World War II, and actually served as part of the British police force in, I want to say it was Botswana. But the point was he quit that job because he was like, this is terrible. I hate policing these poor people because it just feels like we're just the British Empire just swinging our dicks around, not caring about who we hit along the way. It's all for the glory of Britannia. So I think that you could read this interpretation as the ending. I think you could read that as a critique on militaristic nationalism, which is like, he's proud of the country. They did it. They beat the other people. Does he know why? No. Does he know how? No. Does he care? Yes. He cares that they beat them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is that too far out in the weeds? Or is that, is it a fun,
all about the campfire
hot
stories,
take?
man?
All right.
That's it.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think that's one of the big critiques that came out of World War I and World War II, is that nationalism became very much a taboo topic after those two things. World War I was largely fought over all the various treaties and alliances, and then thanks Franz Ferdinand for getting assassinated and dragging everyone into it. It's the one dumb thing that happened to the Balkans that was going to drag everybody into a world war. And then World War II, obviously, the Nazi Germany has wholly ruined the idea of having national pride from just the point of having pride in your country. So apologies, Socrates, but your idea has been decimated by Funny Mustache Man. So suck it, nerd.
That's an interesting outro.
What? I mean, it's that, or we could talk about how Socrates was humiliated by Diogenes, where Socrates was trying to have the fancy symposiums, and then, or I think it was actually Plato, but Diogenes was just being a pain in his ass, and Plato suggested that, what is a man? A man is a featherless biped featherless biped. So Diogenes plucks a chicken, brings it into the symposium, and says, "Behold, man!"
Yeah.
Anyways, that's neither here nor there. By the way, I do see we have a good buddy of ours in the chat saying good things about the book. If he has any final thoughts about the book or main takeaways, please let us know. We'd love to hear it from you, brother.
Yep.
Well,
we've got quite a few people in the chats as a matter of fact. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for chat motherfucking shout outs, your favorite part of the show where we talk to you for being so awesome to talk to us. Let's see who we've got here. Here we go, Z.
Frank White, Bang Bang DGen Gang. Good to see you, sir. Welcome back. Always a pleasure. All right, what's next? Am I frozen?
You are frozen.
But you can still hear me.
Yes,
I can hear you.
Still hear
Yes.
you.
Can you hear us?
Excellent. Yes, I can.
You have a funny little expression on your face, but that's all right.
It's a funny one.
Keep it rolling. Keep it rolling.
Next up, though, we've got Funk Master Hex. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening to you too, sir. Mr. Funk Master Hex, everyone's favorite Trailer Park Boys Julian of the Hex and Pulse Chain ecosystem. We love to see you, broski. Always got that drinkity drink. Zenith, can you see the screen?
Oh, I can.
Oh, you can? Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and take over? This is your show. Here's what we got next.
Triplet Dad. First night I tuned into the...
Oh, no, we lost him. Oh, damn. He got rugged. All right. Well, I guess I will.
I got co-host.
Oh, man. Ooh, we're going to go into this format then. Look at that. Here's hoping that Zenith comes back. Hang on, guys. I got to do some producery stuff. There we go. There's our background. All right. So Mr. Triplet Dad got his message was so powerful that it rugged Zenith out of the show. First night I tune into book club, and it's one of my favorite books. We're glad that it could be your first night here, and that it's also one of your favorite books, Mr. Triplet Dad. Shout out to Triplet Dad. He's the guy who created the Xerox Bistro, and they did the crazy money raising for the here we go. We got Zenith back. I'm going to bring him back in, but shout out to Triplet Dad. You picked an excellent best book to have. Let me see. I got the cameras back in the proper order. We've got Alan over there, Zenith over there, me over there, and background. Bam, balam. There we go. I'm getting pretty good at producing. But yeah, shout out to you, Mr. Triplet Dad. It's good to see you, and glad that we could have the excellent book for you. And then finally, for the chat shout outs, Mr. Zenith, why don't you take it away over here?
Mixed Mix, aka Jasolay, says evening all. Good to see you, sir. Plato's Retreat.
P. Plantos? I don't know what that is, but I thought it had something to do with Plato, but I guess not. But that concludes our chat shoutouts.
Excellent. All right, gents. We've covered the book. We've talked about the concepts. Even had a few soapboxes along the way. All right. Where do we rate this book? On the 0 to 10,000 hours mastery. Where do we rate this book?
Oh, that's a good one.
I'd put it at 500 hours to 1,000 hours, maybe.
I was actually thinking the same thing. Probably between, I wanted to say between 100 to 1,000, but that was a wide gap. So I was going to go between 100 and 500. I think that if you are rather inexperienced in the world and you just stumble onto this book, you're just going to read it and go, wow, this place sucks.
Yeah.
But you need a little bit of life experience to get in there and be like, oh, this guy is, there's some parallels here. Oh, does our life suck? Does our world suck? That's the realization that I think people really arrive at the end when they get the most out of this book. So 500 hours, I think, is good. Get a little bit of experience, but understand the pitfalls afterwards so you can live the rest of your life the best you can.
Yeah.
How much would be 1 year?
1 year? Okay. Yeah, so 2,000
I
hours.
know how much. 2,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 5 years to be a master or something, usually, or something.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. That makes sense.
People work
Okay.
about 2,000 hours a year.
Well, don't forget, like when I was in high school, when I had very little experience on anything,
I do remember those days.
Yeah. I just flew by the book and I was like, okay, Cliff Notes, okay, pass the test, fine. Or no, well, not pass the test. I got my A. Let's be real here. Got my A and then moved on and did what I needed to do to pass the test. Or I keep saying that, get an A. Anyway, because at high school it was basically for an Asian, getting an A was passing. So
what's the saying?
in medical school,
not Bayesian.
Yeah. Passing the test was more important in med school. Like anyway, so what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so I mean, I didn't care so much the concepts because there was a good amount of life experience that's needed. So I was gonna say 2,000 1 year just to kind of see the world and kind of get pissed off by it a little bit, and then trying to get the parallels with what's going on with the world and then the book. Once you start putting two and two together, then it becomes a little bit more meaningful. But yeah, I mean, I would say not in the beginning stages, like it's going to fly right through your head.
Yeah. And it kind of sucks too. It's a depressing book. It's not fun to read. It hurts. You know, it's painful. You basically read a story about a guy whose life sucks the entire time. He gets a little bit of happiness, then is taken away. And it's like, that is parallel to a lot of life. And there's no like, the incentive to read this book is literally just to learn the lesson, right? And that's probably the most important thing is like, don't let this become your life. Don't let this become your society. Like, avoid this at all costs. So I think that you definitely need like, you need a little bit more stomach. You need a little bit more willpower. You need a little bit more like adulting experience to really appreciate the stuff that's in this book. Because like what Alan was saying, I read this book also in high school, and I flew through it, and I just remember like Big Brother's always watching, and don't trust the government. Which, you know, then right after high school I went to go work for the government for 8 years, and it's like, what a great. I mean, I don't regret it at all, but it's kind of like just kind of funny. But like
really learn the lesson.
The premise of the book is important to understand as an adult after you have some life experience and after you have some like stuff under your belt. You know, if you just start off in this book, you'll be depressed and you'll have a horrible time, and you probably won't appreciate the lessons that are inside it, as well as someone who's already been walking along the path. So that's why I say 500 to 1,000 hours. It's similar to, you know, both of you two. I don't think that this is a good starting book. I think this is a good, like honestly, I don't think that people need to read the book. If they can get the lesson out of it without having to read the damn thing, then like more power to you. The bottom line up front is don't trust the government, keep sovereignty for yourself. And yeah, Big Brother is always watching. So read those terms and conditions.
That's true. The book is only like 300 pages, including the appendix. The spacing is actually not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Will, you're correct about the pacing of the book. There are parts that move pretty good and actually kind of captivate you pretty decently.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other parts like the book within a book where you start getting the explanation of the world, and it's like, okay, it's starting to slow down a little bit. Like, I get it. Like on to the next stuff, and then you finally get the gruesome horror story, Saw torture scene where all that stuff happens, and then you end up with your nice little ambiguous ending there. Overall, though, I mean, I think that reading this book probably past the age of 25, so you get a little bit of world experience, your brain is fully formed, I think makes sense. I'm not saying that because, like, yes, the book is a little bit graphic about the sex stuff, you know, going smashing nasties, going heels to Jesus, all that kind of stuff. And there was actually like a high school teacher. I was doing research for this one. There was a high school teacher in the 70s in Minnesota, I think, who wanted to have this on required reading list for high schoolers. But then like the school board said, no, you can't do it. We're going to fire you. And then after appealing, they brought him back and they're like, all right, for the college bound folks, it's optional. And it's pretty much like the explanation was like, oh no, they talk about nasty things doing the sex. It's like, all right, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
Outside of that, though, very good book. I think it's an important book. How about that?
I think it's an important book. I wouldn't say it's a good book from an enjoyable standpoint. I would say it's a good book from a lesson standpoint. That would be my framing. A great book for the lesson.
Considering all the other things that we've read on here, and I am including when I had to listen to the Iliad last week for a different book club and the Odyssey for this book club, yes, this is a much more enjoyable read than some of the other stuff. It does get slow at points, but at the same time, I can totally understand if this is not your cup of tea.
Yeah. It's like, you know, liver or Brussels sprouts. It's good for you. Perhaps you should eat it. Like, I don't want to read it again. I'll say that. I've got the lesson down pat. I don't trust the government. I'm in the cryptocurrency. I've worked in the military. I've seen the horrible atrocities and dealt with the incompetence and, you know, people that are chasing power. So I don't need the lesson anymore. So for me, people who don't know those things should read it. And that's what I'll do.
They probably won't though.
Yeah, then that's perfectly fine. And then they'll be the pros that are serving me coffee. So, hey, so be it. I'll be the inner party member.
The proletariat. Only you get the real coffee. The pros, they get the fake stuff.
Exactly. So, there you go.
Alrighty, folks. Let's get out of here for the night. Dr. Alan Chen, where can the folks find you? What do you got going on?
Well, if I'm not vaporized tomorrow, I'm on Twitter, active on Twitter. I'm actually been tweeting about another book I'm reading, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is an excellent book. That's the prelude actually to the Book of Trust that we read recently. And I think it gives a lot of context to that book. So at some point we should get to that one.
It is on the short list.
Yes. So I'm at X at unplugged_doc, and I'm also on YouTube. I've been on this trip being the influencer that I am on a whole bunch of podcasts recently. I did one recently with Alan Roberts yesterday and also with Alex Stanciu the week before. Those are 2 really excellent podcasts of kind of the gist of like kind of health these days and how you should approach it. 2 very, very good ones. And I got to like a bunch more on the way. So yeah, I've been on an influencer trip, I guess, this last couple of weeks. So I hate to say that word. But yeah, I'm on YouTube at Your Health Unplugged, as also on Rumble with the same @, and I'm also on Instagram if you want to follow where the hell I am at unplugged.md.
Love it. Glad to hear it, sir. Glad to see you're busy doing good influencer work over there.
Influencer work.
All right, Will, what you got going on? Where can the folks find you?
For the folks at home, you guys can find me on X over at Will Stevenson X. Super simple, all one word. That's where I post a lot of aphorisms, and occasionally I'll repost a silly meme or some cool stuff like that. So if you want to check out what I'm up to, then head on over there, shoot me a DM, or hit me up anywhere else. For those of you guys that want to find me in other social media places, all of my social media can be found at will.pls.fyi. That is my Pulse domain. So everything is linked from there. And as far as what we've got going on in the near future, the DGen Roundtable is going to be doing their standard Sunday show. So you guys can check us out on Sunday starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here where you're watching us now, whether you're catching us on Twitter or on YouTube. You guys can find us here streaming every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern. If you guys want to be a part of the DGen Book Club, as you might see in the little scrolling chyron down below, if you want to join our DGen Roundtable Telegram family, then you go to DRT Join Now. If you want to go to Book Club, then you go to DGen Book Club. So again, it's just t.me/DGen Book Club or DRT Join Now. The Book Club is more of a notes section where we just amalgamate all of our thoughts on all the books and write down quotes and post resources and things of that nature. And then the DGen Roundtable Telegram is a more fun and fancy place where people post memes, talk about wins, fitness, cryptocurrency, all that good stuff. So on that note for book club, I have decided that the next book that we're going to be doing for book club, oh shoot, and I had it pulled up here just a moment ago. Fiddlesticks. I have to go and find it because it's in the book. It's in the book suggestions. So I wanted to do Hijacking Bitcoin, which is the hidden history of Bitcoin, but that's one for that I think that you wanted to host, Mr. Zenith. So I'm going.
Doesn't matter to me.
It doesn't matter to you. All right, sweet. So we're going to do Hijacking Bitcoin, which is the hidden history of Bitcoin. That is by what's his name? Roger Ver. That's right. It's by Roger Ver. So that's the next book that we're going to be doing on Bitcoin. It's basically his story and about how Bitcoin is not what it originally set out to be. So we're going to do a little cryptocurrency for book club to take it a little bit of a different direction. So that's the next one for book club. You guys can catch us here every Friday at this time doing this thing. For Wednesday coming up, we're going to be having Mr. Crispy Man and Bill from the Actuator Protocol, and we're going to be talking about Hex T-share rates and the things that are going on since the OA has staked, and the new payouts and what people can expect in the future, and how it's all calculated and brought together and used in the Actuator Protocol. So that's what we're doing on Wednesday. It's going to be an awesome show. We've already had both of those gentlemen confirm that we're rocking and rolling, so it's going to be a good time. And that's all that I've got. Mr. Zenith, where can the folks find you, and what have you got going on in the near future?
Folks, you can find me on Instagram and X over at ZenithDI. You can also find me in the DGen Roundtable Telegram chat, or you can also find me in the Walk the Block Navigating Digital Finance Telegram chat. Spending a lot of time over there with some of the boys trying to get that up and running. It's a more professional manicured service for you. We do a show on Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube, 1 hour long, trying to keep it tight, compact, and give you good info for the week. Keep it informative so that you are interested, but also simple enough so that your grandma can watch it with you as well. Outside of that, though, I have an interesting weekend because I have a little bit of emergency surgery to do on 2 parts. I may or may not have burned out my RAM in my computer after overclocking it for 5 years. So we will be experimenting. And then additionally, I also picked up some new Space Marine bodies because I needed bodies to kit bash for more Warhammer work. So I'll be sending Will some photos on what I'm doing with that. But outside of that, yeah, folks, Sunday coming up, 8 p.m. Eastern time, as always, over here at the DGen Roundtable. We'll be talking our new show, talking about everything coming out this week. Continuation of the pump, we'll see. Quantitative easing, forget about it. Outside of that, though, we want to say, folks, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We know that time is your most valuable asset, and we want to thank you every time that you spend it here with us. So, Mr. Producer, that's either me or Will, we will get that trigger finger ready, because it's time to remind all the folks out there to degen responsibly.